Forgot how boring this was. Like, genuinely. Oh, look, he's dead. I apologize in advance for the low quality of the footage of this video. I recorded quite a few games in SD before deciding that the quality just wasn't up to scratch, and I conceded to replay and re-record them in HD using an upscaler. So you're probably asking, why is Lufia using the inferior video quality? The answer is I never want to play Lufia again. It is the stuff of my nightmares. Let's just get into the train wreck that is Lufia and the Fortress of Doom. This section includes spoilers, so skip to this timecode if you wish to avoid them, or just don't bother, because Lufia's story is so basic that you probably already know what happens. Lufia starts in a pretty unique way in that you're playing as Maxim, Guy, Artia, and Celan at the end of their quest, and they're facing off against their final bosses, the Sinistrals. After the battle, Doom Island starts to crumble, a bridge collapses, and Artia and Guy are separated from Maxim and Celan. Celan is injured from the battle and can't cast warp magic, so Guy and Artia escape, and Maxim stays behind with Celan, and they perish in the crash. Then the game flash forwards 90 or so years in the future, and you take control of one of Maxim's unnamed descendants. Maxim's descendant goes to a nearby town, only to find it destroyed by the revived Sinistral Gades. They do battle, and Gades kicks his ass. The world panics at the return of the Sinistrals, and Maxim's descendant and Lufia start adventuring to stop them. One of the first things you do is encounter a now ancient Guy who's still alive, and he tells you to go find Artia, and then he promptly dies of old age. Convenient. Along the way you find Agro, who kinda just joins up with you. Then eventually you find Jaren, who is going to be sacrificed. You save her, and since she's an elf she can take you to Elfland, which is where Artia is. Convenient. Artia is in slightly better shape than Guy and tells you about Dual Blade being the only thing that can defeat the Sinistrals. You do a huge amount of fetch quests and actually end up finding Dual Blade in the ruins of Doom Island, and statues of the Sinistrals are there as well. The party notices that Lufia looks a lot like one of the Sinistrals, Aram. You keep pushing onwards, and eventually Lufia is revealed to be Aram, the fourth Sinistral, and she steals the Dual Blade. You go after Lufia to Doom Island, just the three of you. The Sinistrals smash the Dual Blade, but it reforms. Dual Blade returns to Maxim's descendant and you fight Gades, Amon, and Deos without Lufia. Lufia gets a clue and rejoins the party, then Gades, Amon, and Deos merge into Guard Deos, who promptly defeats itself because you cast Mirror on your whole party. The party then goes their separate ways. Agaro and Jaren get together, and Maxim's descendant travels the world and eventually returns home. Then Lufia shows up! What a happy ending, despite her being the root of all evil who will revive the Sinistrals. That summary may have seemed a bit short, but those are really the only important parts of Lufia. A huge amount of Lufia is what I would strongly consider useless fluff and totally extraneous to the actual plot, which is defeating the Sinistrals. And these are the villains that put up a worthy challenge to Earth's mightiest heroes. I actually like the introduction to Lufia. It's probably my favorite part of it. It gives you context into the Sinistral's power and enough backstory with Maxim, Celan, Guy, and Artia to get you going. Then the game takes a huge misstep and you never encounter the Sinistrals again after your initial battle with Gades, where you're predetermined to fail. Then you're just traversing the world doing incredibly mundane fetch quests and town hop until you finally get Dual Blade and you're given a revelation out of the blue, then you go fight the Sinistrals and it's over. There was a lot of potential for actually using the Sinistrals. Guy dies of natural causes, why not have Gades come and do him in after 100 years? You could have done a similar thing to Artia. It just really needed some reinforcement that the Sinistrals are really evil. They kinda just show up at the end and that's bad. This gets kind of alleviated in Lufia 2, but it's still not perfect. In the introduction you have 4 characters, Maxim, Guy, Celan, and Artia. Then when you start the main game, you get 4 other characters, Maxim's descendant, the hero, Agaro, Lufia, and Jaren. These characters fall into some pretty obvious archetypes, and the party you play in the main game echoes the party you play in the introduction. Maxim is the equivalent of Maxim's descendant, Guy is the equivalent of Agaro, Celan is Lufia, Artia is Jaren.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Maxim's descendant is your basic physical attacker, but ends up getting some very powerful healing magic as the game progresses. He's also the only one who can use the Dual Blade, the most powerful weapon in the game. Agaro is a very standard warrior type. He gets no magic, but he can equip heavy weapons and armor, although he has terrible magic defense. Lufia is your primary damage caster, but she does get access to some healing magic as well. Jaren is basically your healer. She does get access to some offensive magic, but it's quite weak. She also gets a bow, which is quite useful since it's the only weapon type in the game that can hit every monster on the screen. The second you get Jaren, her bow is very useful because Lufia's targeting system is abysmal. Enemies are grouped, and you can only target a specific group, not individuals within the group. This can lead to battles being a lot more drawn out and dangerous than necessary because of the way damage can distribute amongst members of the group. This is mostly a problem in the early game because the first few boss fights are against 3 or 4 enemies in the same group. If you're lucky, you'll focus fire and the battle will be faster and easier. If you're unlucky, you'll distribute damage in such a way that every enemy goes down to a single hit left before they finally die. You can't be tactical about this, you have to grind to hedge your bets either by levels or by buying expensive target all items like boomers. You'll be doing that a lot in Lufia. And guess what? This is the kicker, your entire party counts as a group. So if an enemy uses multi-target spells on you, it's gonna hit everyone, whereas your multi-target spells may only hit 2 or 3 out of like 4. Your entire party counting as a group is one of the worst aspects of Lufia. Enemy status effects frequently hit your entire party, which is incredibly frustrating. It's really pathetic that one of the advised strategies in Lufia is using Jaren's weakest bow to attack your own party to recover from sleep and confusion status at a few boss battles throughout the game. There is some target all magic present, but it varies in effectiveness. Lufia's explosion-based spells basically require a ring to be effective. Hell, most of Lufia's magic requires a specific ring to be effective, and you can only find those in one place. Lufia has a horrible EXP and money curve. You're always rewarded paltry sums of gold and experience from fighting battles, so you can't really proceed by just fighting the battles as they come. You won't be able to afford pretty necessary equipment upgrades just by fighting everything you come across, you have to grind. Lufia tried to alleviate this by having the Old Cave. The Old Cave is a dungeon that you periodically return to and explore additional floors to find equipment. This includes the Blast Ring, Ice Ring, and Fire Ring, which are basically required for making Lufia's spells worth a damn. I didn't think much of the Old Cave until I had made significant progress in the main story. I read a fact that told me I should be getting these various rings to boost Lufia's damage output, so I had to go back. I mean, that's really all there is to most JRPGs. You walk around and you talk to people, you fight random battles. Most JRPGs are sold on their story, graphics, and music. Lufia just has none of that going for it. I honestly thought Lufia was a Super Nintendo launch title. It has that very early SNES look about it. I kinda call it like the growing pains era of systems. Developers haven't really learned to utilize the new hardware, so while it generally looks better than previous gen, it usually looks terrible compared to later releases on the platform. Lufia isn't a launch title. It's actually pretty far along in the SNES life cycle. I think it looks terrible. I think the music is grating and repetitive. I think the animations and art while in battles is lazy and boring. I mean, you can just compare it. Lufia came out in December of 1993, and Secret of Mana, a game with at the time awesome graphics, music, and a lot of cool features like co-op, came out in October of 1993. I genuinely feel bad for anyone who got Lufia for Christmas instead of Secret of Mana. I don't have anything good to say about the production values. I actually don't have a lot of good to say about anything in Lufia. There is one boss that comes to mind to me as the hardest part, and it's the Pirate. He continually puts your party to sleep with a spell called Foul. He can lock you into a pattern where he'll put your entire party to sleep with Foul, then he'll cast Storm, damaging your entire party without waking them up, and then when your party finally does wake up, he'll put them to sleep again. I found it incredibly frustrating. I died to him by far the most of any battle. I honestly felt like it might have been impossible, so I went back and I just grinded for what felt like hours and came back. Even after grinding, I still found it annoying because he kept putting me to sleep and doing the same thing, but this time I could survive it. I felt like there was nothing I could do. I was just hoping and praying that Foul would miss and I'd be able to do anything, or at the very least it would miss Jaren so I could attack my own guys to wake them up. I was absolutely channeling my inner Darkside Phil during that fight.
Look at this, I can't do anything. The game. What the fuck? I'm not doing anything, I'm just getting hit.
The funny thing is, the final fights versus the Sinistrals aren't even close to difficult, and I think that's largely intentional. The finale is a gauntlet of 4 bosses, and if you die, you need to start over from the beginning. Gades exclusively uses basic physical attacks, Undead, which buffs his attack power, and he uses a buffed physical attack on occasion. It means you basically just heal after every hit and continually attack. Even if he manages to kill a party member, which is unlikely, he can't kill your party. He spends the majority of the fight casting Undead to buff himself anyways, so there's very little threat. Every fight after Gades uses exclusively magic attacks, and Jaren has a spell called Mirror, which reflects magic. You can probably take a wild guess how I beat the final stretch. You spend the remaining 3 battles with the Sinistrals simply spamming mirror in a rotation on your party, and you can't die. Once you get mirror on everyone, it's just follow the rotation. Jaren, Maxim's Descendant, Lufia, and Aggro. You spam mirror and your strongest attacks until they die. It takes a long time, but it's a complete joke, and it's a horrible design oversight. Giving the Sinistrals even the option of a physical attack would at least make the fight a little intense. Watching the Sinistrals kill themselves with the strongest magic in the game is just a joke. And it's also the fastest way to kill them. Most of Lufia is a huge slog that just takes forever. The entire runtime of Lufia is doing worthless garbage that has very little to do with the overarching plot. You're given the runaround in every single thing you're doing. It's not enough to get 1 or 2 pieces of Illumina to get the ship to fly at the end of the game. You need like 7. It doesn't help that the dungeons are all mazes. Many are just needlessly long. There is one section in particular that just rubbed me the wrong way. It requires you to talk to a guy who wants to build a bridge in the cave. You meet him at the cave, you go to where the bridge needs to be built, then he tells you he likes to have someone watching him, so you have to go to a vantage point, which means you have to leave the cave, go in through a different entrance, and track down to that vantage point. Then, he finishes his work, and you have to go all the way around and talk to him again, just to cross the bridge. It's disgusting, and I was like so tired of it by that time. It was just awful. Every single dungeon is like that though. You always have useless runaround for no reason besides making the game longer. It's not enough to go up the tower once, you have to go up twice. It's not enough to just do a thing once, you gotta do this huge runaround every single time. I already mentioned it, but the EXP curve is terrible, which leads you to having to grind, which means you're spending even longer in the game than you need to. Usually JRPGs have ways to alleviate the grind, things like equipment, accessories, and spells that experienced players can use to beat harder encounters at lower levels. As far as I can tell, Lufia doesn't have that, and you need to use the old cave, which only has a very limited selection. If there was armor that gave immunity to sleep or confusion, the game would absolutely be a lot shorter. I beat it in just under 17 hours, and I really wish I could get that time back because I hated every single second of it. There is nothing even remotely entertaining about Lufia in the Fortress of Doom. The only thing I think was mildly interesting was the introduction with Maxim's party. That just kind of sets the stage for something kind of cool, and then it just drops the ball immediately after. Obviously the targeting system is terrible, and it needs to be more traditional. There just shouldn't be a target group as it is now. It should be a blanket single target or target everything. When your magic hits maybe half the enemies and their magic hits your entire party, it's quite frustrating. The EXP and money curves needed to be better rounded. This is really one of the aspects of JRPGs that is almost always horribly done. There are games where fighting whatever you come across is enough, but those are usually the anomaly. Most JRPGs are grindy because they just give you such terrible EXP returns for long battles. It's the same thing with money. Stuff in shops is always expensive and you're never adequately rewarded with gold, even if you're exploring and opening every chest. The old cave was a crutch to alleviate this problem that just shouldn't exist. It barely makes Lufia's offensive magic worthwhile, and you don't really get enough gear for Maxim's Descendant or Aggro through the ancient cave, and you still need to rely on shops. Other than that, it's really hard to give objective feedback on Lufia because I know a huge amount of my criticisms are addressed in the sequel. All I can say for certain is that Lufia is a terrible game, and if you're interested in the series, you can just go play Lufia 2 instead. Everything is better in Lufia 2. Everything. Lufia in the Fortress of Doom is by far the worst JRPG I've put in the time to actually sit down and beat. You're doing worthless fetch quests for its entire runtime. When you're just about to the end, there's a final extended fetch quest which just bloats the runtime to a disgusting degree with having to collect Illumina to be able to fly to Doom Island. The Sinistrals are basically absent from the whole game, and when you finally do face them, they're just one-trick ponies and they're easier than most of the previous bosses. I could look past that if there was any redeeming qualities in the battle system or the story or anything, but it's all so frustrating. Even games that are arguably more archaic, like the original Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, they just have better combat systems and they actually have redeeming qualities to playing them. The story is absent. The production values are virtually non-existent. Anything you'd want out of a JRPG is just not here. Lufia is a waste of time. I firmly believe you'd be better off playing almost any other JRPG, except probably Xenogears. Xenogears is terrible too.
I'm on it, Chief. Antidote file is incoming.
Got it. What's next?
Nothing. I'm pulling the plug.
Don't try to be funny, Hansen.
Hey, according to you, that file is all you really need.
You listen good, Hansen. You get that uplink working right now. I want that data.
You want the rest of this? Come get it yourself.